Hi, Harry. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi, thank you very much. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing good. This has been a bit of a roller coaster of ups and downs and emotions. This documentary obviously shows some quite vulnerable sides of me, and obviously speaking about this to many people has, it has been difficult, but at the same time, I feel like very good mentally. I feel like I have a lot to give now, and yeah, I'm just very, very happy for the future.
I'm happy for you. It takes a great degree of bravery to share yourself with people. There's a lot of your own introspection that goes on. Why did you feel confident in this project, being that it's sharing so much of yourself with so many people?
I think the great thing about documentary filmmaking is that when you are filming, sometimes you film things and you don't even understand why you're doing it. There were so
Mhm.
many times I turned the camera on myself and I was upset or I was emotional, and I have zero idea why I filmed it. I just know that with films, you need to have that aspect which people can relate to. And so everyone has emotions, everyone deals with emotions in different ways. Everybody has gone through some degree of trauma. And to deal with that and to make an impressionable documentary, you need to go to the vulnerable and most kind of like hard to talk about parts of yourself. And, you know, I started filming this ocelot as a passion. I didn't ever think it would become a documentary. It just so happened that everything happened for a reason. Things worked out and some things didn't. And I was learning day by day. And yeah, it's just a kind of crazy but an incredible experience.
Mhm. I think of my own personal fear factor. You had a different fear factor given your military background and then going into new terrain once again. Was there ever any of that type of fear of your surroundings? Because even in the midst of the other chaotic things that were happening, it seemed like there was never that type of fear for you.
I personally have been very fortunate with diving into deep ends and just trusting my gut. The only times that I ever really felt fearful has been with other people.
Mm,
Every environment that I have been in, even in Afghanistan, I was surrounded by beauty. It was a beautiful place. I remember kingfishers being the most brightly colored color I've ever seen in my life, but then 100 meters away, there was people trying to shoot.
mm.
And it's always the people which cause the issues. And so I've never gone into a an area of the world and felt fear. I've always been fearful of what the people in that area could bring.
Mhm. I like the way you say that. It's very metaphorical for here in Los Angeles, where there's immense wealth, and then you cross the street and there's tremendous sadness with homeless and drug addictions. And, it exists in the jungle, it exists in war, and it exists in regular metropolitan life. So I really like how you said that. When I watched you, I shed a lot of tears for you. I cried a lot. I was very engaged with the connection that you felt with the ocelot with Keanu and with Khan, the first one. What new insights have you gained into yourself watching the documentary as an observer and not as well, like when you were in the moment?
I think that the main thing that I take away from it is that I'm proud of what I've achieved. Even though I've gone through some trauma and I have definitely been dealt a pretty unlucky card of hands sometimes. I I feel like I have this. I, it's very hard watching it. It brings back a lot of trauma. It brings back a lot of negativity. But at the same time, I know that this film is going to do good. I know that this film is going to have an impact on people. And I know that for me personally, it has given me that drive and that push that I need, and the platform as well to do what I'm doing now. And I've just started my nonprofit called Emerald Arch, and Emerald Arch is a 501(c)(3) based in the US, and it's gonna be buying land in Ecuador,
Mm.
not only to protect it from oil companies and deforestation, but to give the world a bit of more of a chance to help the animals within it, to do scientific research. But the main project that we're working on is going to be bringing people with depression, PTSD, mainly looking at veterans, to the jungle as a retreat and as a place of safety and security, so that they can kind of go through the same kind of process that I had to, going to the darkest part of your life, going to the jungle to kind of reset. Without the jungle, I probably wouldn't be here now. And I know that 22 veterans a day in the US alone kill themselves. And I hope that with this film, that if we can save one of them, that would mean the world to me.
Amen. Well, I thank you. It's very brave. Thank you for opening your life to all of us. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Take care. So much for your time. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I was very engaged with Wildcat. With I shed many tears, and I really really enjoyed it. When you are now able to look at the film as an observer and not be in the moment, what insights have you gained into yourself, and how has this project transformed you?
Oh gosh. I mean, I think I've seen the film, yeah, twice now. And I see it as an origin story, kind of like my, origin story, Hoja Nueva's origin story. I like to look at it that way because there's so much of it that even for me, even though I'm just an observer now, is like still painful. A lot about the whole process and the animal side, the personal side, all of it. So I think, that's why I don't actually watch it all the time. But it's, yeah, it's been a journey and it's really surreal to kind of see those moments on camera. And I think, the story kind of came to life in a different way than I had imagined, but it seems to be very impactful for people in different ways, which is really exciting.
hmm I've seen a number of animal related programming where we go into the wild and see animals in their natural habitat, but I've never seen anything like this where we really have the insight of the people who are doing the work.
Mhm.
Did you, when this came together, was that the original goal, was to have the focus specifically on you and and not on the ocelots or the jungle or anything like that?
No, no, no. So I mean, the archival footage of Khan raising Khan was something that we did because we wanted to document the process of rewilding him because it would have been the first rewilded ocelot, and it was for research and of course for us. But then, when Trevor and Melissa came on board after we found Keanu, they wanted to make more of a feature-length documentary. I at least always thought that it was going to be strictly about the ocelots and about the nature, the issues. You see a little bit of the logging and some of the issues that we face, the challenges we face on the ground. But yeah, and it morphed into a film that was a little bit more personal, more human centered, around mental health and those types of things, which of course were a big part of the overall story, but they were still only one part. But there's only so much that you can show in an hour and 40 minutes. So
For sure. Your organization, in the ending credits, we get sort of updates of where you are with your efforts and your rescue efforts, and it's grown tremendously.
yeah.
What do you hope that the documentary helps in terms of those efforts, specifically with with working with the animals and your effort in saving protected areas, and what do you want the big gain to be?
Yeah, I mean the whole point for me is, how can I have a bigger, like, this has given me a bigger platform and a bigger voice to speak about those issues and speak about Hoja Nueva and our efforts and really reach people. Like, we are an organization that relies upon donations, and so it's really great to be able to speak at this level to people and show people that yes, you can make a difference. There have been so many wildcats and hundreds of other animals that have come about after Keanu, and there are still, we get 3-4 calls a week, and there's very much a need, and there's still so much more to do that I hope people check out our website, and we're pretty prominent on Instagram, getting there. They can follow us and share our efforts and support and donate for cats just like Keanu.
Mhm. And lastly, a very popular project was on Netflix that dealt with domestic people harboring animals, exotic animals. What information would you like to share with people who watch a pride and think it's all fun and games, but this is a real problem with taking these animals out of their natural environments?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a strong believer that even showing a captive animal in a captive environment can do harm. I mean, in a world that everything is media based now, what we project out into the world is extremely important. And so any types of media or like documentaries and things that show wild animals in captivity or being okay as pets, I just don't think, I think it's harmful. And I think that we are at a point where we really need to focus on, wild animals are not pets and they're not for our entertainment. They're not for like touching and holding and for photos and all of that. Like they are meant to be in the wild, and we need to do everything we can to keep it that way. And so I commend all of the networks that do things very naturally and keep wild animals in the wild, and that their efforts support conservation in that way.
For sure. Well, I thank you. It's very brave to show this level of your own personal life in the midst of doing these efforts. Thank you for sharing your story, and I appreciate your time.
Appreciate you too. Thank you.
My pleasure. This moved me in so many ways. I shed many tears, not just for the animals, but of course for Samantha and the team out there and Harry. And it was just very, very beautiful. When did you become involved in knowing that you wanted to shift the focus more from the conservation efforts and the to the more human side of the story? Because there's many stories about animals and conservation efforts, but not of the people who do the actual work and how stressful and how intense that can be for them. And I'll begin with you, Melissa, for that question.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. From the beginning, when we first learned about Samantha and Harry and the work that they were doing in the Peruvian Amazon, it was very clear the kind of mental health struggle, and the PTSD element, and that was something that Trevor related to Harry quite deeply on, as someone who struggled with depression for about a decade. And so that was always, we say he wore it literally and figuratively on his sleeves. You see that trauma. So it was apparent that that was going to be a part of the story. But I think one thing, and that was something that we were really interested in, was how can we tell these conservation stories in new ways and with nuanced, layers, and also reach new audiences.
Mhm.
But one thing that we didn't anticipate and that we only learned through production was Samantha's backstory. And so she opened up to us about halfway through production. And that was largely because, I was also able to be vulnerable with her and share for the first time in my life some of the things that I had experienced as a child, and her as well. So there was this kind of this therapeutic, deeply, opening up conversation in making the film. And so it was a thread, I think, in our minds throughout, because we were very isolated, and we were all willing to go there with each other.
Mhm. Trevor, over to you. Just sharing any parts of oneself is very, very brave. And these are real people sharing their real moments. They're not actors. They're just people who are engaged with these conservation efforts and trying to work out their own demons in the midst of that. How much convincing that they need to even change the slant of the work that way?
Um, so like change like
Well,
what?
and from it strictly being more conservation geared
Mhm.
and instead of focusing more on the human element of what's happening there in
So
their work.
they always knew that, that we were drawn to their story because we saw an opportunity to tell a different type of conservation story. And that was kind of one thing that Melissa was referring to. I mean, we sort of call it backdoor conservation film, if you will. I think, people have seen so many films at this point where they're blamed or they're made to feel bad, like you eat beef and so you're a bad person, or you drive a car and you're a bad person, and those kinds of films and that way of communicating isn't working. It's not convincing anybody to do more to protect these places. And so we saw in Harry and Samantha's story an opportunity to hopefully convince people that these places should be saved because of their power to actually help us on a physical and mental level. And one of the really interesting things that we're seeing now, thanks to science, is that we're actually seeing that nature has a physiological impact on us, right? Like, so a 30-minute walk in a park can have profound impacts on your health. I mean, they've done brain scans and seen that areas in your brain that are involved with stress actually go, they become deactivated after a 30-minute walk in a park. When we talk about this stuff, we also think about, like, if you look at neighborhoods, right? Rich neighborhoods have tons of trees, poor neighborhoods that have very few trees, and you see differences in chronic illnesses in those two neighborhoods as a result of the lack of trees. And so we felt this was one way of communicating the importance of nature, was actually telling it through a very human story. So they didn't take any convincing, they really let us kind of control the story. And in terms of like what they shared and the vulnerability that they shared, that was really the result of the fact that we lived together on this platform in a very remote place. It was a small 20 by 30-foot platform, and we lived together, we bathed together, we cooked together, everyone went to sleep together at the same time. And so we became a family. And, families are typically very, intimate, right? We share our sort of deepest secrets with our family members usually. And that's what happened. We all trusted each other implicitly, and we were all filming each other, and I think that's how we were able to capture so much of the really beautiful moments, and also some of the more difficult and raw moments in the film.
It was beautiful. Very, very well done. I shed a lot of tears. I really,
Mhm.
really enjoyed it. Thank you guys for your time. Best of luck to you. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you so
Thank you for
much.
having us here.
Take
Great
care.
chatting with you.